What's up, everybody? Mark with Kardavox Academy here, and today we're doing what we do. Shadow of Intent drops a song, we cover it. That is the nature of things. That's how it works. And I'm very excited because I love talking about Ben's lows. Now, you may think to yourself, if you're new to the channel, Mark, you're a little bit low energy. Your eyes are a little bit puffy. Yeah, you're right. Because my wife works from home today and she's got meetings all day. So I'm filming this at like 7:30 in the morning and I'm tired. Well, I just got back from daycare drop off. So it's closer to 7:45. So yeah, your boy's a little sleepy. I'm a little tired, but if you're new to the channel, let's just cut to the video as fast as we can. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I am a extreme metal vocal coach, I guess. I never know which one people are saying these days, but my full-time job is teaching people how to make screams safely and efficiently. That's what I do for a living. And I'm also a metal vocalist, 15 years of experience doing this stuff. And I've been in a band called Kardavox. We've got a new album releasing on the 25th. Check it out. But let's do Shadow of Intent, Feeding the Meat Grinder, featuring Corpsegrinder, by the way. Pretty cool. My water's almost empty. Terrible. Off we go. Okay, it's 45 seconds. I usually try to stop. I don't try, but it usually happens that I stop around the 40-second mark. So again, if this is your first time on the channel, I pause and I talk about vocals a lot. That's what I do here. So this is like become, and you know, Ben's been doing vocals for a long time. This has kind of become his thing. Really fast, very fast, very rhythmic, very pulsing sorts of sounds. Now there are a couple things I want to talk about here. There's a lot that goes into this, right? Being able to do vocals quickly is a skill set in and of itself, especially when we're talking metal vocals, right? Now, why would that be? Why would it be that, you know, well, if I just get the tone and I can do vocals slow, I should be able to do them fast? I mean, that's definitely a start, and practicing slowly is a really good way to move more quickly. But to be able to do vocals for such long strings of time, there are a couple things that need to happen. First and foremost, you have to have a really even and steady airflow. And it's not even just that it's an even and steady airflow, it's an even and steady airflow that's strategically held back. You're not going to hold vocals this long if you're doing the old school traditional false chord. It's just not going to happen, right? There are a lot of different ways to close up the tissues above the vocal cords, right? The way that I tend to do it, and I've had Ben on the channel a couple times before, and the way that he seems to maybe also partially do it from the way he's described the sensation of his voice, is by essentially taking the arytenoids, which are these tissues up above your vocal folds and in the back, and closing them and moving them forward to like the base of the epiglottis. And this gives you like this sort of sound. That's what I do. I was recently up at the University of Utah, and they put a scope down my nose and MRI and all this stuff. This is the part of the study with the charismatic voice, but this is a good way to do it. There are other ways. You can just tighten up the arytenoids and close them themselves, right? You can brace the false folds over top of the vocal cords like you're picking up a heavy box, right? That's not generally an exercise I like to just toss on the internet, because a lot of people who self-teach with that exercise, they get a lot of strain. It's not that is bad or wrong. It's just, it needs some context, I have found in my experience. So there are multiple ways to get this even held back airflow. And that generally is going to give you a sound that's much tighter and much more concise, a lot less floppy like the traditional false chord. Like, I gotta do it kind of quiet because my wife's on a meeting. That is hard to do quiet. Well, hard to do like sub speaking voice is what I mean. And Ben is extremely good at this because he's been doing this for an incredibly long period of time. Now, Additionally, what we need is we need a really good and proper placement of the voice. I have found through my experience that this tends to be in the front of the mouth, right? If you do something like, one of my favorite ways to have my students do this is to have them pretend to eat sour candy in the front of their mouth, right? So they go, they make this puckery face. This is going to sound stupid. Do it along with me. And then hold the vowel. You'll feel buzzing in the front of your face. And do you also hear kind of that boomy resonance? I don't know how that will come through on here. But if I hold this position, it's a really comfortable placement for my voice. And you'll notice I'm not having to push too hard to get that tone, right? This is key. This is key. There are other things that you have to do to be able to go this fast and actually still sound good. But I want to kind of get to the song real quick. One thing I do want to point out that I absolutely loved was that standalone, like millstone low vocal. It sounded like somebody like spin it. Well, a millstone sounded like somebody using a stone, grinding stone on stone to like break corn kernels or something. Whatever you mill with a millstone. I don't know. I've never done that sort of thing in my life, but a lot of that comes from a good proper mouth shape. Open space in the back, closed narrow opening in the front, right? Ooh. The back of my mouth is yawning. The front of my mouth is narrow. Ooh. And then, of course, a little tunnel or a little guttural. Never heard anybody. Probably tongue up. And that sounded closer. Anyways, let's keep going. There's a lot more song and a lot more to talk about. You know, Ben has really been embracing the highs a lot. I mean, he's done highs for a long time, but he's really been embracing them. One of the first videos I had him on the channel, he talked about how his highs, he liked the sound, but there was still something he was sort of like getting comfortable with as much as his mids and lows. And God, it is really showing. You know, there's a lot of open TV static sort of sound. My high vocals are way too loud to do while my wife's on a meeting, but if you want to hear them, I've got like almost 500 videos on this channel where I do them. And you can also listen to Kardavox, hear me do them there. But yeah, he has really like gotten to the point where it's not just like, yeah, Ben also does highs, but it's also like, yeah, Ben is also dominating high vocals. Open, clear, resonant. It doesn't sound overly pinched, right? It doesn't sound overly pinched. Now, sometimes, especially with these like extreme metal vocals, you can have a great sound with too strained of a technique. This is something that's just absolutely true. And this is why sometimes doing vocal analysis of these videos is a little bit tricky, because I have to like think about what do I hear versus what do I tell you to do. Or sometimes, you know, this actually happened with a couple vocalists I had on the channel where I was like, your vocals sound so relaxed, and people were like, they're not. You know what I mean? But that's a whole nother topic. I plan to make a video just talking about the concept of relaxation and extreme metal vocalization, because it can be confusing. But yeah, his high vocals and his ability to slide from the low to the high is very, very impressive. This is his ability to do this is part of the reason why I say it sounds kind of like he and I are doing the same thing with you know, the arytenoids and the epiglottis meeting, and the epiglottis kind of tilted back, but it also maybe it's not exactly the same. And the reason for that is because when your epiglottis is tilted back as far as mine does, it's really hard to turn it into a high. Like my epiglottis tilts back, and if you're not sure what the epiglottis is, it's this little trapdoor piece of cartilage that covers your airway when you swallow. You swallow and it goes, and it slides the food towards the esophagus. Mine like tilts all the way back and like touches the back of my throat, like the postpharyngeal wall, and it kind of does like a little that motion. right? And then underneath, the arytenoids are pressing up against it real hard. And so when I do that sort of thing, very difficult to turn it to a high. I have to go that scream, mid scream, like mid loose false chord. It's like a, I'm going to do it whispery because again, my wife's on a meeting. That's impossible. And his ability to slide makes me think there's less epiglottis, more maybe like airy epiglottic fold, maybe more bracing, right? And it would be interesting to get him under a scope as well. Let's keep going though. But yeah, his rapid fire command here is nuts. I don't know if it's going to top Flying the Black Flag. I hope that was the name of the song. I have a terrible memory, but that song is unreal. But so far I dig it.
There's Corpsegrinder.
Yo, so that was a really, really good duet, or a really good back and forth, I guess. I love Corpsegrinder's voice, like legitimately. I kind of missed the Cannibal Corpse boat because when I was young, Cannibal Corpse was like evil sinner music. Like I grew up in an environment where like D&D could, not everybody, but there were definitely some people who believed Dungeons and Dragons would possess you with demons, right? That was kind of my upbringing, you know. And so there was no Cannibal Corpse in my house, that's for sure. There was no Cannibal Corpse, so I kind of missed the boat with that. But I will say, his voice is amazing, and one of the reasons I like Corpsegrinder's voice a lot is because that like. And this is true of so many vocalists. And this is why I'm going to throw a little hot take in here because it's my channel and I do what I want. This is why the more I coach, the more I teach, and the more I get into this extreme metal vocal thing. I mean, I'm 15 years in now, 15-ish. The more I get bored with the false chord and fry conversation. It is an important conversation. It is valuable. These terms matter, but they are just such a smaller part of the pie than we thought they were 10 years ago. You know what I mean? And so many vocalists that we hear these days, they start somewhere and then they kind of transcend it. You know what I mean? They start somewhere and then they add their own flavor to it. And so sometimes there's a lack of synergy in the conversation on the internet where people want to find their own voice, but everything is either false chord or fry. And thankfully, that dichotomy is starting to change. A lot more people are talking about epiglottis. A lot more people are talking about, airy epiglottic folds and things. But honestly, the longer I teach, the less I'm interested in talking with students about that. When I was up at the University of Utah, I was talking with researchers about that all day. With students, I'm more interested in color, tone, and texture. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What emotions does it instill within you? And Corpsegrinder, he has this scream that builds on this false chord roar, but has gained its own identity. There's a little bit more of like this very resonant vocal tone sound in it that I can't replicate. Well, I would need a little bit of time and a quiet house, or a house where I'm not going to disturb anybody. But it's like, would it be safe to say that Corpsegrinder, at least for like these mids and lows, builds on false chord? Yeah. But would I say that is false chord? Sometimes I feel like when people ask me to say that, it's like pointing at a cake and being like, that is eggs. It's like, well, it's got eggs in it. Or even better, that is flour. And it'll be like, well, it's got flour in it. It's based on flour, but it certainly has become more than a bowl of flour now. I think that Corpsegrinder's ability to so evenly just roar, he's got such a roar in his voice, and yet he sounds incredibly distinct from other vocalists who have a lot of roar. When I think of vocalists who have a lot of roar, I think of Joe Bad. I think of Courtney LaPlante. I think of, those are the first two that come to mind. he sounds very different from all of them. And his mids and lows contrasting against Ben's mids and lows are amazing, because Corpsegrinder has a little bit of like this almost like ambient pitch. It's not this, it's not right, it's not what it sounds like anyway. It's not how it hits the ear, but there is like this resonance phonation that we can hear and that I always find super interesting. We'll talk more about Ben's vocals in a little bit, but I kind of wanted to focus on Corpsegrinder because I really, Shadow of Intent, you know, they did a section on I think that Aborted single, yeah, Ben's voice against Sven's voice was like nuts. They're strategic. They're strategic about their duets. Now, let's keep going, because I'm sure Corpsegrinder is going to come back, and we'll talk about like the basics of starting with false chord. Speaking of the basics of starting with false chord, we have an e-course. In addition to giving face-to-face lessons, we have a online course, False Chord Fundamentals, and it is just like the name, False Chord Fundamentals. It's been very helpful. It's been very well received. There are some people who have bought it and they're like, duh, this was terrible. I didn't learn any advanced techniques. And it's like, dude, it says fundamentals in it. Do you not get out of here? Go away from me. Leave. Anyways, let's keep going. I do not care. I do not care. I want to hear that again. Whoa, that was amazing. Oh, I'll talk about why in a second. That was my favorite part of the song so far. Yeesh. Let's talk about vocal identity. Let's talk about vocal identity. What is it? Right? Well, it's essentially, it's the things that we do with our voice past how we generate our distortion that make us distinct. It's the things where, you know, if somebody was to make one little sound, guess the vocalist from one sound. Like if I was like, guess the 90s pop singer from this sound, most people would be like Britney Spears. Right? One thing that Ben and Corpsegrinder do very well to build vocal identity, and for anybody out there who's like, I want to build my own sound, listen closely, is the way that they meter their voice. Now, this is not to say that this is always where they are, but this was a very, I don't know if it had to be intentional. This was a very smart way to be like, I am Ben, I am Corpsegrinder. So Ben had some hop skip in his voice. Now, I don't have his pattern memorized here because first time reaction, it's got to be a first time reaction. But Ben has a lot of bum 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 ba-dum bum ba-dum bum bum, like a lot of that hop skip. And then Corpsegrinder comes in and he's just like kicking the door down. Right? So sick. So sick. And then like, I don't know what the heck it was that in the background. That sound effect was so dynamic. So dynamic. That was a chef's kiss. Love that part of the song. Hats off to everybody who wrote it. Let's keep going. I'm nervous. But I'm excited. Did you hear that drum change at the end? I don't play drums. I don't know a whole lot about music theory, so I'm not the guy to analyze the drums, but did you hear that? Oh, God, give me a good drum change, and I'm going to simp. I could talk about that outro for an hour. I could talk about, you know what? Actually, let's talk about it. And I'll tell you why. Because I just got a notification. Well, this was earlier. I got a notification that my 9 a.m. student had to reschedule. So we got more time than I thought. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's listen to this again and let's fucking do this. I'm going to be pausing more periodically, and then I'll probably let us listen to it out at the end. There's going to be a lot of pausing coming up, and there's going to be a lot of very detailed talking because I have the time and I want to. I'm kind of in this for myself, y'all. I have to be honest. This is a bit of a selfish endeavor because I like talking, and I like talking about metal vocals. So here we go. Yes, that's where I want to stop it. So there are three main things I want to talk about here. The first is that this is an incredible amount of vocal control, and it's a really good example of a sound that we should be searching for, often may find ourselves searching for when we're first learning how to do a new sound, a new vocal. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, obviously, when we are teaching or learning metal vocals, it's not very useful to just be like, okay, now scream. Like, imagine if I was charging people money for vocal lessons and they came in and we just started by going for the scream itself, right? That would be ridiculous. Oftentimes, the best approach is to think of these as funny voices, as silly voices, right? Let's get away from the finer, deeper science of it all. Let's get away from, these very stock exercises, which I do use. I'm not saying they're bad. There are many students, many times where we're doing very strategic and concise exercises. But sometimes, and I'm beginning to find that most of the time, guided, strategic, and informed, that's the key, silly voices are the best way to go, right? Now So if you listen to him doing these vocals, does it sound like he's screaming? No. Does it sound like he's even being super loud? No. Does it sound like he's talking? Yes. And this is something I say to my students all the time. Speak the vocal. Don't breathe it. Don't shout it. Speak it, right? Now, this leads into my second point, which is where generation can sound the same and be very different depending on who you're talking about. If I was to go for this sound, I would start, and many people are aware of this because they've seen these videos before. I would start with like a Kermit the Frog voice with some grit on it, right? Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog, hi-ho. And then it turns into an orc, something doing. Or like I can't remember the unit from Halo, but orc. Sort of turns into that sound. And I'm just going to talk in that voice. I'm going to say, hey, my name is Mark, and I'm listening to Shadow of Intent. And what a lot of students will do is they'll get to this point. And they'll say, oh, I read online that Cookie Monster vocals are bad, so this must be wrong. Irritates me. Because are Cookie Monster vocals bad for a final vocal? Sure, of course. It's like going back to the cooking analogy. You shouldn't eat raw flour. But if you're making a loaf of bread, do you see raw flour that you're about to add water to? And you're like, oh, raw flour is bad. Oh, I shouldn't make this dough. So with that being said, right, we have this vocal. Does it feel right? No. Does it sound right? No. But can I make it where it feels pretty close to right? Yes. Hey, something doing in front of my face. Remember chewing on that candy? Remember chewing on the candy? Num, 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 num. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop using my vocal cords. I don't need them. This is oftentimes the most difficult part for the student, is disengaging these vocal cords. And there are different ways that we can encourage that. I've actually kind of just stopped saying disengage the cords entirely because I find that it's too confusing for the student. So I'll say breathe into the vocal, or I'll say whisper the vocal, or I'll say, think grit forward. These are all terms that I have found teaching to be more effective. And it begins to sound like this. Not that.
Hey, something need doing. Hey, something need doing. Hey, it matters not. Hey, but oh, and now we are talking in this narrative voice.
Now, this is where you can really do a lot of good learning. This is where you can really do a lot of good learning. And you have an advantage against old farts like me who self-taught back when we didn't have any resources whatsoever. We just kind of went for it, right? But if I take this,
hey, it matters not. Hey,
and I just gently lean, just a touch.
Hey, it matters not. Hey, it matters not.
Now I have a really cool vocal that doesn't require a ton of work. Ha ha! Ha ha! Nice. Okay. And what we have here, this leads me into my third, still second point, I guess. You can generate something that sounds very similar and yet be very different. I know I'm talking about this, but it's important. I'm an educator and I was just with a bunch of people who do science. So how am I going to not talk about it? That would be ridiculous. But essentially, when I was up in Utah getting this vocal study done, Travis Ryan, cattle decapitation, he was there too. He and I had a point where we were in the kitchen of the Airbnb eating some dinner. I don't remember what it was. And we were comparing vocals. And we both make this sound. And it sounds really dang close, like almost identical sometimes when we're just talking,
hey, something like this. Oh, this sort of sound.
And so we came to the conclusion, our scopes are going to look entirely the same. Because really, it was even to our trained ears, we were like, dang, there's not a lot of variation. What did the scope show? Absolutely different things. Now, I'm not going to talk about what the scope showed with Travis because that's technically his medical stuff and he can talk about that on his own. Plus, we want to wait for things to be analyzed and released. But for me, like I said, it was a lot of epiglottis and a lot of arytenoid. And for him, I'll just say that that's not what they saw from what they told me. I unfortunately wasn't in the room when they did the tests, but when I linked up with him later, he was like, nope, there was no epiglottis going on at all. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? We sound so similar when we do that sound. And so this is why sometimes I also get bored with the false chord fry dichotomy, because there are times when you put two vocalists together and god dang, they sound super similar, but you look inside and you're like, nope, it's not. It's not as similar as we thought. And so again, this is where color, tone, and texture come into play. If I was to cover this song, I would not be concerned with, am I doing the same thing Ben is doing? What I would be concerned with is, does it have the same, again, color, tone, and texture? Let's listen to a little bit of this talking again. I'm making an editing nightmare for myself, but it's worth it. Now, I'm going to make a similar sound. Is it going to be the same sound? Probably not. And to a degree, I don't care. Also, it's not going to have panning and compressors and sounding really cool. I'm going to take this sound that I make and I'm going to kind of smile it up.
Almighty noble. I don't know the lyrics, right? But I'm talking in this sort of shadow of intent sort of voice.
Now, again, that may be totally different, but it has the same color, tone, and texture, right? Or at least close enough where if you put it on the same plate, it wouldn't ruin the dish. And that's kind of the thing. Third thing. Fourth thing. I don't remember where we are. Remember when I was talking at the beginning of this video about what we can do to be able to do vocals very quickly? Mouth shape is a huge part of it. Obviously, mouth shape is a huge part for any vocals we do. If you have been in the extreme metal vocal world for a long time, especially the deathcore world, you know, hearing somebody say mouth shape is important, you're like, well, no, duh, we've known that forever. But always remember, there's a beginner in the room somewhere. You know, that's something that sometimes people say about these videos. They're like, oh, this is a lot of beginner information. Well, it's like, well, yeah, Terrence, there are other people in the room other than you, bruh. Yeah. But with that being said, mouth shape is also important when it comes to how we are perceived. And I want to give you an example. I'm going to say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Okay. Now I'm going to say this in this narrative voice, maybe a little bit of press to get some actual tone. And I'm going to say it, and I'm going to be kind of like, you know, like sort of like this mouth shape and this mouth shape.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
That sounds pretty okay, right? I probably wouldn't do that as a final on an album, but it's a good start. That's maybe a double, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to smile it. I'm going to smile it, right? And I'm going to focus on like a lot of teeth.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Terrible. This sounds like a cartoon character, right? And the main thing I changed was my mouth shape, right?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Doesn't sound good. Very important for fast vocals. And if you listen to bands like, you know, maybe they'll kind of hit this point sometimes, but like bands like Archspire, bands like Shadow of Intent, who we're listening to, Lorna Shore, who does, you know, some fast vocals for sure. A lot of their fast vocals are oh, wow, wow. Right? However, for narrative vocals, a little bit more teeth can sound sinister. You're going slower, so it's not going to have as much of this cartoony effect, right?
And in the darkness of time, I found.
You know who this sounds like? This sounds like what's that YouTube channel called? This was like 6-7 years ago, maybe even longer. But there's this guy who's doing like a example of metal vocals, and he's like
pig squeal, grunt,
and he used to do like a lot of metal reviews. I think had a mug with a spoon in it. What's that guy's name? If you know the YouTube channel I'm talking about, put it in the comments below. Let's keep going though. Okay, let's talk about tongues and trombones. Let's talk about tongues and trombones. The hell are you talking about, Mark? Well, I'll tell you. So when we are trying to create a lot of different metal vocals, especially mids and lows, and we are trying to get them lower, it is okay to utilize your larynx. Love it. Use that larynx. I am a fan of utilizing the mouth first. I get as low as I can with tongue, lip, and jaw. Then from there, I'll push my larynx down if I feel like it. I'm not a big fan of like cranking my larynx down as far as I can. It's very uncomfortable. So where does the trombone come in? Well, one of the best things you can do, I wish I could like slice my cheek open and just like flap it back so y'all could see. You'd see a bunch of fillings and crowns. Take care of your teeth in your 20s. If you are in your 20s and you're like, I don't go to the dentist, you should, because I didn't. And I have spent like, since hitting my 30s, probably like $7,000 fixing my teeth over the past 7 years. You think you're immune to it. You are not. It's going to get you. Like, let me be the boomer and say, you think you're safe. You're not. But anyways, I wish I could show you. One thing that's imperative is that we if we're trying to change the tone of our vocal, especially in this mid and low spaces, we think of our tongue like a trombone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. You can kind of see it, right? I'm sliding that mother freaker. Listen to what happens. Okay, so here's in front. You're gonna be like, oh, Mark, that's a guttural. And you'd be right. What if I move it back a little bit? Farther. Even farther. Now, when it gets to a certain point, I have to open my jaw a little bit more, and I have to relax the top of my throat a little bit more, because my tongue is going to bunch up. The back of my tongue is going to get even more engaged, even more engaged. It's going to push the epiglottis back, and I use that a lot more than I realized, right? I always knew I used it, but I didn't use it. I didn't know I used it as much as I did. But I'm back here. Right? And there's a moment, I don't know where it is, where he kind of throws it forward like that. One of my favorite examples of this is in Left to Suffer, Loathe, when the previous vocalist of Brojob, I think it's the previous vocalist of Brojob, he does this, I can't stand myself. Right? Now, what if I think about my mouth shape? I'm going to do kind of in the middle, right? See how I can create the illusion of different vowels. A-I-O-U. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Wow. Right? Ben's way better at that than me. I think I've gotten pretty good at it, but Ben is like, listen, I'm not going to say that just because I'm a vocal coach, I'm like the best. Like, there are some people out there where I'm just like, Jesus Christ. And they're always so young. They're always like these like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids outside of the Dollar General where they're going to do their like 4-hour shift, just ripping the best vocals I've ever heard in my life. It's crazy. Let's keep going. Amazing. I love anything where I have to kind of pay attention to figure out where the snare lands. If the snare fakes me out, if I think it's gonna go and that hit is not what I thought, I'm like, okay, well played. But anyways, excellent vocals here. Excellent song. Like, this is killer. I don't think it's gonna beat out all right, let's figure out what song this is. I don't think it's gonna, because I know I'm saying it wrong. Shadow of Incank. Flying the Black Flag. I was saying it right. It's not going to beat out Flying the Black Flag for me, but it's still pretty up there. And again, I love that they chose Corpsegrinder and they put them side by side. I don't know if they've ever collabed before, but it was a great collab. Here, while I round out this video, you guys can look at my really cool desktop background. I always make my background whatever video game I'm playing. It's a Tales of Arise kind of day. Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is coming out though. I'm very excited for that. I'm trying to finish this before that, but I got a lot of work to do. Anyways, so that's a great song. This is part of the reason why I always will talk about Shadow of Intent when they drop a song, because the learning opportunities are so high. Sometimes the big fancy recent song that got hit or that got dropped, like, it's just not the best learning opportunity. And sometimes as an educational reactor, I get frustrated because I'm like, everybody wants me to watch this song where there's nothing to say. But I should be reacting to this song, which is getting a lot less views, but people are going to learn a lot more from. So Shadow of Intent is always a great combination of everybody wants me to talk about it, and there's so much to say. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I've had Ben twice on the channel before. You can go watch those previous videos. And again, I am a full-time extreme vocal coach. So you can check out cardavoxacademy.com, learn about lessons. We have an e-course, working on a new one. It's not going to be out for a while. That's all I have. I really appreciate y'all watching. I'm very excited about this song. With that being said, I am going to go catch up on student emails. Catch y'all later. Many thanks, much love. I'm out.